Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and our 2020 real estate market is getting off to a start that's looking a lot like our 2010 market, would you not say?
Absolutely.
So today, as our return guest, is the president of the Barrie and District Association of Realtor, longtime appraiser, Commander-in-Chief, Robin Jones.
Hey, gentlemen.
Hey, Robin, how are you?
Good.
Nice to see we got that figured out. All right,
yes,
good.
Thanks very much
intro
for
you.
Yes, I think we are definitely into our spring market.
We definitely are, and I'm seeing some interesting things out there. I've been representing buyers in the past couple of weeks, putting bids on homes over list price, confident we're going to get that listing, and we get bumped. And I'm hearing about it from other realtors. It's happening here, there, everywhere. This is the same thing we were seeing early in 2017. So I want to talk a little bit about that. We may be early into this. It may be short-lived. It may go for a while. I want to talk a little bit about what happened then and what it may do to this market now, and some of the things that happened in 17 that kind of lingered on afterwards.
Well, I want to know, were we actually slow before now, or were we kind of median before now, and it's just really escalating and picking up?
Well, I think we've been, it's a truly, this is, I've been hearing of this a lot from what Mike's been saying from some of the residential realtors that are facing this competition.
Right.
Multiple offer situations, are happening quite in over list price sells. And well, we've been pretty steady the last year.
Yeah.
A little bit of definitely always been sort of hovering on this lack of supply, lack of good product. A lot of our realtors are trying to find property for people and not being able to find it for them. So we've had not as much of a dramatic lead up that we did to 2017's market, and it's been stable. So our past year, we've seen 3.5 to 5% increases through most of Simcoe County.
Average prices.
Yeah, average prices. And even in the GTA, we're seeing that push. Basically now we're looking at prices that are returned to where they were in 2017. So, so we're definitely seeing a hype up, and we're not sure. I'm not sure. This definitely lack of supply is probably what's driving
It's
the market
low,
right now.
but is it low compared to 2017 numbers of active listings?
2017 in March, I remember looking at the market the first week of March for a single family dwelling in the city of Barrie, which is our biggest market, easiest to draw comparisons from. And we had 74 listings on the market, and I said to my buyers, I said, oh, we're just facing a level of uncertainty. I'm going on vacation. I'll see you guys in a couple of months. And I looked at last night, we've got 190 single-family dwellings on the market.
Still low, even for this time of year. That's
still low. I think the market's been good since January. We've had such a mild winter.
Buyer enthusiasm has been pretty constant since early January.
It has been strong.
And that's partly due to maybe a milder winter, I might think. And,
I know. I know over Christmas holidays, there were a lot of times people would usually take time off during that period because it's typically slow in real estate. But there was people that were saying, I was busy between Christmas and New Year's. There were buyers in the market.
Yeah, I'm wondering, there were buyers in the marketplace, but at the same time, I'm wondering from a seller's perspective, were people paying attention to what the regulators were saying in terms of coming up in April, we're looking at reducing the stress test regulations and we'll make it easier for people to qualify. So were they maybe holding off a little bit to say,
some may have been,
I'll list when I know that I'm not going to have to deal with someone who may or may not qualify.
Yeah, I don't actually have my hands on the pulse of that like you guys do. We generally track the sales more than we track the buyers' behaviors in that regard. So you guys are the guys we go to for that kind of information.
The mortgage brokers.
Yeah, well, listen, we'll get into that in another segment. I've got some thoughts that I know we definitely want to talk about what's trending in the real estate market right now. I'll obviously add my 2 cents worth on the finance side. As we get into the next segment, I think.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to touch on that. I want to focus a little bit on, again, that 2017 market and the impacts that it had. Like my own personal observations were, it was a quick run. There was a couple months where people were getting $575 for a house that they listed for $525, and everybody I saw for a year or so afterwards knew somebody down the street on the next block who was involved in one of those sales. and believed that they too were going to be able to overlist their house, get overbidding, and and be able to clean up on this. Meanwhile, we had returned to the way the market was.
Yes, we certainly did.
And people would not let go of that. And my fear now is for the the coming months when I go out to list a home, and this little rise and fall has subsided. People are still going to be thinking that that's the market we have.
Well, that's a very valid concern. And
Yeah.
we're not there yet. I mean, 2017, that first quarter, we saw average prices selling for 110% of list. Your example is pretty common. I saw 600 sell for 800. It was
Yeah.
it was just ridiculous.
There was a few ridiculous
A lot of the buyers were coming
examples.
up from the GTA after getting big prices in the GTA. And the buyers locally, the people that were trying to sell and buy, were
More
out of
conservative.
luck. They
Yeah.
couldn't find anything locally.
No.
As soon as you sell, your gains there were going to be paid out in the gains or the price you had to buy. So they
Exactly.
were heading north. So everyone from Toronto came to Barrie, and everyone from Barrie went to Midland, Penetanguishene,
Yeah.
Stayner, Collingwood. We all went to these areas where prices were less, more affordable.
And,
So-
and that migration, we see it again here. People in Barrie, as prices start to increase, will try to take advantage of what they can get for a home here, sell, and then maybe move a little bit north,
Yeah.
maybe up in
Yeah.
Skoka or Aurelia,
we're not seeing that. We're
Midland,
not seeing the
Penetanguishene.
hyperbola in the outside areas of Barrie right now.
No,
What
it's-
we're seeing here
it's-
is so we're at about 100% sale to list price ratio,
Yeah.
whereas in 2017 it was 110%. Average time on the market then was less than a week. Now we're at 12 days, which is still really low.
It is, yeah.
190 on the market as opposed to 74, just using Barrie as a
Mm-hmm.
comparison. So we're not quite there. And then of course we've got COVID-19 issues that we're dealing with. Are we dealing with this kind of toilet paper?
Well, it's funny human
insanity?
behavior.
Yeah.
Run on the commodities,
Yeah.
basically.
And that's when something seems dear or in short supply, people want it all the more, be it toilet paper, Purell hand sanitizer or houses.
Yeah,
So,
is this a panic buy?
yeah.
Who knows?
Well, I mean, I think that those are all some interesting questions, and I want to actually throw some things into the mix there, and I want to talk about sort of the both sides of the spectrum. So you're seeing what you're advising us on what you're seeing current trends are. You're comparing it to it. I mean, I think one of the things that we have to talk about when we come back from the break really is the short-term memory that some people have, right?
Oh, yes,
So
for sure.
what really? I mean, there's the one side of the coin. What was the other side of the coin? What are the implications for realtors? What are the implications for the buyers? What are the implications for the sellers? What are the implications in terms of things along the lines of conditions of finance and condition of inspection? What kind of
Appraising of the
pressures
home.
are people putting on each other when they think the sky is falling and it's a Chicken Little moment, like, oh my gosh, if I don't do it now, I'll never get in.
Yeah.
And you actually said the same thing to your clients that I said to mine when we were talking before the show, and that was, I was telling my clients, hey, listen, you know what? Take a sober second thought. Give it a second. Calm down. Don't put yourself in a position that you're going to be displeased with when the honeymoon wears off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we're in that marketplace, both politically, and it's a political environment as well as our real estate environment.
Yeah. And as you said, you took a break from it in 17. You've done so in the last couple I'm assuming that tan did not come from the plaza down the road.
I take my
No.
breaks all the time.
Yeah.
You're always
Okay.
razzing me for that. But anyway, I work to play, or play to work.
Play to work, work to play. One of those.
Well, listen, when we come back from the break, I think let's get into some of those things. What are the implications? What other things are we seeing? What advice do we have for our audience? What kind of recommendations do we have? And really, is this truly the last, final, good opportunity to get into the market
The last
right now?
boom ever.
Exactly.
That's right.
So
Call now.
stick with us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. We're thrilled to have you here, Robin. We've got Robin Jones, president of the Barrie and District Real Estate Association, or Association of Realtors. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we're joined by Robin Jones, who's the president of the Barrie and District Real Estate Association of Realtors. I'll get that right one of these days.
BDAR.
It rolled, yeah, BDAR, yeah, for everybody who knows what BDAR is.
Yes.
Yeah. But speaking of which, for everybody who knows of, let's actually just get people caught up real quick. What actually happened in 2017? Give us your overview. What actually happened now that we're in 2012? What year are we? 2020. And we can look back at 2017 and say, what happened? What caused it? How did we come out of it? What was the end result? Give us 30 seconds on that.
Sure. We had a year of lack of supply in 2016. Consumer confidence was up. people were actively seeking out the marketplace, and then by the end of 2017, it just went ballistic. The buyers in Toronto market went really
End of
high in
16.
price. End of 16, yeah.
Yeah.
And the buyers market went crazy, or sellers market went crazy. Everyone was selling for big dollars, and they came up to Barrie, and that pushed through the prices as well. Barrie and District all the way up to Muskoka, prices just went through the roof. We saw a 20% increase really from the last quarter.
Coupled with the low inventory at the moment.
Super low inventory, interest rates were good, economy was good, there was a lot of positive aspects. And then in April, the government brought in the foreign buyers tax, they brought in the stress tests, and it was literally the door closed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was a big deal with the the government in their infinite wisdom thought we're going to try and fix this situation, and there is no Canadian market, so you can't just bring in this foreign buyers tax and think that it's not going to have a negative repercussion in a town of whether it's Regina or Saskatoon or something like that. Not everywhere was Vancouver.
No.
And here's what we know after the fact as well, that if I'm not mistaken, the data that I read was the entire impact of actual foreign buyers' influence was less than 4%.
Yeah, it's very low, and it has typically been that around the world where they've implemented it. But it has just like some of the stigma that can get attached to things, even like COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
You get this perception. We saw a 6-month lag in foreign buyers. They all just went, oh, that's it, we're right.
But as a buyer in this region here, I mean, anybody who listed their house for sale, good for them. If they were selling, maybe they were looking at it as being empty nesters and maybe moving into a condo or moving out of the region or something like that. You're selling at a premium. Somebody from the GTA was buying your house. Almost nobody from Barrie was buying a house in Barrie.
That's right.
Couldn't do it. Couldn't afford it. Many people really.
And to add to that, if we looked at the curve on the graph for prices, 2016, if we were here, that run up brought prices up here, but then they didn't just level off when it was over. They'd return to where they were.
Gave back every dime that they had.
Yeah.
So that actually put some people in a really precarious position. I wanted to talk about that impact, actually, if you don't mind, because it's one thing for evaluation to go up for buyers and sellers. That's great, and we talked about it. If you're buying and selling in the same market, you're
it's
net
a wash.
neutral. You're pretty much a
You're
wash.
fine.
But what about the people, from my perspective here, what about the people who, well, one, it's one thing to put in an offer and say, well, great, I guess I have to go 100,000 over asking or 10% over asking or whatever it might be. The bank's got to believe it too,
Well, that's
though.
it. The next step is coming to you, and then the appraisal. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were numerous situations where a bank wasn't buying it, basically. And I know that you've got some detail where, whether it's in British Columbia, was the ones that I was looking at, court cases that I was looking at, where the buyer was actually on the hook for not being able to complete the transaction, and the seller didn't just go after the deposit; the seller went after the loss.
That's right.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people caught behind the 8 ball in 2017. A lot of people sold before they bought. They thought that, well, they'll wait. The people that sold and then bought later, they did okay. But the people that sold, that bought, thinking they were going to sell later at a higher price, as soon as you speculate in the market, you run the risk of losing. And there was a lot of losers in 2017. And we're in a situation where I think the realtors advise buyers, if you buy and sell in the same market, you're not going to lose. And that same market means the same day, pretty much.
Yeah.
So you go out and buy something, and then you sell your property. You're probably not going to lose right now.
So I want to set the record straight just a little bit. I think that there was unnecessary panic in 2017. People thinking, if I don't buy now, I'll never be able to afford a house because those foreign buyers are coming. And we proved that. I mean, time proved that to be a complete fallacy. What I also don't want to do is create a panic right now that says, don't buy now, right? It's just eyes wide open.
Be cautious.
Eyes wide open,
Yep.
do your homework, have your ducks in a row, stick to the basics. I know that I've probably got to be the most boring guy with a TV show, but basically it's the fundamentals. Stick
Yeah.
to the basics. Can you qualify?
Surround yourself
Does
with
it
good
make sense?
professional people who
Yeah.
are going to not have ulterior motives or personal motives, but are going to be there to support you in your efforts.
There's
in
a
your
lot
best
of
interests.
there's a lot of situations where people said to me, "Oh, I wish I'd sold. I wish I'd sold." People that were in a transition, they were ready to give up their house and go rent,
Right.
or go into a retirement center or a condo or a different product or move into a different jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So if you lived in Barrie and you could get that high price and you wanted to move to Gravenhurst or Bracebridge or somewhere further out where it wasn't subject to it, you were going to win. And those people did win. And now people are saying to me again, I'm already getting calls, and Mike's had some people he's dealing with as well, that, you're just like, this is it. This is the time to sell at that premium, because we really are back in the terms of right now that sort of
time to sell
average
if you're
price
moving
of
out of this
10-17.
market, not buying again in this market and going to be
Yeah,
have it all taken
it's
back.
definitely a good seller's market if you're making a change.
And the best advice that I like to think is the best advice I give to people when they're looking at real estate as an investment is, if you want to sleep at night, if you want to reduce your risk, think of it as a long-term proposition, because if you get involved in some of these short, emotion-driven ups and downs in that, your risk of losing is far greater.
Yeah.
So.
Sound like a financial planner now. Too.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about what are some of the things that are actually compounding this. So we're talking about a shorter supply. And we have shorter days on market, et cetera. There is an escalated interest. We are looking at buying over asking right now, competing bids, et cetera. We've also got on the horizon, April 6th, I believe, is the day for insured reduced stress test qualifications. And that nets out for someone who earns $100,000, basically at 4% additional buying power. Okay, so you can buy just a little bit more home with that. On top of that, though, we've also got the Bank of Canada saying, oh, well, we're responding to some current market trends across the world where, there's some job layoffs, there's some plant closures, we've got the flu
Saudi
that's going around,
Arabia.
the COVID-19 thing that's going on. We're reducing, we want to see if we can re-stimulate the market. We're going to reduce the lending rate. So that's 1.25%. So you tack that onto an already hot market, an already short supply, an already reduced stress test, and now you're inducing people or incentivizing people to buy with reduced rates. All of that creates for even more of a hot market. And I'm wondering about the double-edged sword, because there are those people who got themselves into a bit of a pickle. They had a bunch of unsecured debt before. They got their credit cards racked up at 19 or 29%. I've actually got clients who walk in my door and they found themselves with 36% second mortgage rates, which is just absolutely
That's
insane.
It should be illegal.
It should be. It isn't yet. Hint to those who are watching and who are regulators. But the point is, though, that they may likely get advice that says, market's hot, your house is going to appraise for more. Let's get an appraisal. Let's refinance you, and we'll take out your unsecured debt, and we'll take the equity out of your home to pay that off. And then what happens? Then you got people who took a credit card debt and put it onto a 30-year amortization, and they didn't change their habits. And they've got a false sense of security. They've got potentially a false, because if 2017 first half was this and 2017 second half was like this, all of a sudden they used up equity that was artificially there. Right?
Well, we've been that's basically been the premise behind owning real estate in our country for 50 years, since the Second World War, 70 years. Basically you had always gone up as a hedge against inflation, but in the past decade, and certainly probably the past 20 years, we've seen it better than inflation. So it's actually become an equity builder. But we also do see a lot in the marketplace where people are taking that equity out, a lot of it to pay off credit cards and just bad spending
That's
habits.
dangerous.
I think it is a dangerous move, and you got to correct your habits, because boy, oh boy, we see people now who are paying the price for those decisions, and they didn't have the equity left over, and a year later or 2 years later, when they have to refinance, they're in a real tough spot.
Yeah.
So when we come back from the break, Mike, what do you want to talk about in the last segment of the show?
I'd like to talk a little bit about public perception of the realtor and our role in all of this that we've been talking about, and other things related to buying and selling of real estate with our president of the Barrie and District Association of Realtor.
Stick with us.
Robin
We'll be
Jones.
right back after
Thank
the
you.
break.
Oh, I know.
And welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
No, we're gonna have to
Sorry, I
redo
wish
that.
you were there, but the cameras weren't rolling. We're here with Barrie and District Association of Realtors President Robin Jones. Thanks for being with
Third
us on
time
the
is a
show.
charm.
Yeah, I got it right. Really, really broken down, but I got it right. Listen, we came off of a segment where we were talking about kind of like what's the bigger picture look like? What are the other side of the sword, that double-edged sword? What are some of the implications? I really want to ask, though, a really kind of a point-blank question, which is we're in a situation where the market's hot. But we're also 12 and a half, 13 years into a 7-year cycle. We're seeing some things in the marketplace right now, currently with obviously COVID-19 across the globe, and there's some plant closures and potential job layoffs, and there's conferences that are being shut down. Those conferences are worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in industry, that will have an impact on jobs somewhere or on small business somewhere. What guidance
Protests and
are
blockades, don't
protests
forget
and
those.
blockades as well? What guidance are we giving our clients in terms of, cool heads? Because yes, everybody wants to take advantage of a great opportunity to cash in when the market's hot. What are we really telling our clients?
Well, it's a very good question, and of course, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be able to give you the poignant and true answer, but we don't. And I mean, our advice is always, as realtors, when we're dealing with buyers in our microeconomic climate, it's, our goal as listing realtors is to get the highest price for the clients in that marketplace. And as buyers agents, our goal is to find the house that the buyers want and get them that house.
The best deal possible.
The best deal possible. And if it can be, and sometimes that is, okay, we're in an offer situation with 7 other competitors, and you're going to have to come to the table with this kind of a number to make it happen. That may not be what it, reflective of the last sale of that exact, similar house.
Right.
But that's, if they want that house, that's what they're going to have to pay. So we do that sort of thing on a macroeconomic scale. We look at the world in terms of cycles. And the operative word there, you say it's a 7-year cycle. We come from this assumption that it's always going to be a cycle. And what we heard in the conference Mike and I were just at in Niagara Falls this past week with the Ontario Real Estate Association is that, there's a lot of, that cycle aspect of economics isn't necessarily relative. It's different in every.
Kind of gone by the wayside, at least for the moment. Yeah.
There's so much regulatory authority that comes in and makes changes that are like that, snap decisions, shut the door like they did in 2017.
So status quo is gone.
Status quo is gone. And
There's outside influences that change the
that's right.
cycles.
So way too many outside influences. What happens in the U.S. versus what happens in Canada could lag, could be ahead of the game. 2019, we had all that stimulus came in. We were better off than the U.S. We seemed to wash through 2009, but we didn't even see the recession in 2014. I didn't even know it actually happened until they put it up on a graph. I was like, oh.
Till you got off the plane.
I didn't even realize it was actually, we've had these cycles. So as far as buyers are concerned, I'd say.
We're closing in here in the last little bit of time, and I'd like to wrap up talking a little bit about when you see anomalies such as what we were talking about that's occurring now and happened in 2017, and different buyer behaviors that influence the market. We as realtors, we're the face of real estate, face of the industry to the public. So we bear the responsibility to, be the cooler head and the voice of reason, but we also take a little bit of the blame oftentimes when something does go awry that may not necessarily be our fault. And I'm not whining and I'm not looking for an out here, but I'm just curious of your thoughts on that and what you might add to that.
Yeah, well, realtors are on the forefront. We do take the heat sometimes, thinking that we're the creators of the issue, where in fact we are the facilitators of buyers and sellers coming together. So ultimately it's the market forces that dictate what happens in the relationship, and then we can actually go forward with that and assist people through that process. So we are there, and often we do get that call. So we do believe we're the facilitators and not the problem.
Now, you are working, though, with Queen's Park. You have lobbyists at Queen's Park. You've got lobbyists in Ottawa as well. So you're trying to work. A big portion of your function is education as well, education of realtors, but also education of your clients. Again, we've seen this before. Potentially, we're suggesting right now that we're seeing some common themes happening from just 3 years ago. So we're walking in not going, wow, we've never seen this before. Because 2017 for us, certainly in my generation, I think really was
caught us off guard.
We've never seen this before, we've caught it off guard. Now we're saying, status quo's out the window. We may have seen this again. How do we make sure that we sort of temper it or go through it? So, are you educating? You just came out of a conference right now.
Transparency is definitely one of our biggest issues, and accountability for the realtors involved in the negotiations. When we're in multiple offer situations, we have newer rules in place that actually make that more transparent through the whole process, so that buyers are aware. And there's potentially other changes that are coming down the pipe, and that's the new Teresa Act that's just been approved, the provincial legislature.
Tim Hudak, our EO for the Ontario Real Estate Association, give him a little bit of a plug. He will be here 2 or 3 weeks, and he's going to talk in depth about that. So.
Well, I would say, because we've got about 10 seconds left, I would say definitely, especially going into a market like this, if you're buying or selling, or if you're thinking about buying, selling, or refinancing, can't say it enough. Speak to a professional.
Call Mike. Call Mike.
Call Mike,
Call
yeah.
Mike. No, but definitely.
Operators are standing by.
Yeah, hurry now while supplies last. But definitely speak to a professional. Make sure that you've got your ducks in a row. And especially if you're thinking about going into it, you want to know that you've got your financing in place.
Absolutely.
You want to know that you've got yourself figured out and you're in a good spot. That when the honeymoon wears off, you're still happy that you are where you end up.
Yeah,
Right.
totally be prepared. Yeah.
I want to thank you very much
Right.
for joining us on
Thank
the
you.
show once again. I wish you the
Always
best.
good stuff.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
And we'll see you again next time on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.